Hi, my name is Shuto Takashita, and I will be presenting our work on controlling non-humanoid avatars titled Embodied Tentacle Mapping Designed to Control Non-Analogous Body Parts with a Human Body. This work was conducted in collaboration with Ken Arai, Hiroto Saito, Michiteru Kitazaki, and Masahiko Inami. In the field of virtual reality, computer graphics, animation, telepresence, and human augmentation, researchers and users have manipulated non-human bodies with structures different from their own as their own bodies. These non-human avatars or bodies enable people to gain new experiences, motor and cognitive abilities, psychological effects that are not available in the innate human body. One of the greatest challenges in controlling and embodying these non-human bodies is determining how to map the operator's humanoid body structure to the non-humanoid body structure, and what kinds of mapping is better. To answer these questions, researchers have taken approaches such as genetic mapping through machine learning-based approach and comparing multiple control schemas for a third one to find a better one. However, little is known about how to control non-human structures in first-person perspective, which is considered important for a sense of immersion. To address this question, we present our study Embodied Tentacle, in which users control a tentacle-like avatar arm with their fingers. In Embodied Tentacle, users map the left joints of their fingers from the index to the little finger to the serially connected joints of the avatar arm. We compare several mapping methods through task performance, embodiment, practice effects, and user preferences. From these results and interviews, we identified mapping design factors that affect the experience of controlling non-analogous bodies. Through this research, we contribute to design of mappings for the control of non-human avatars from a first-person perspective, as well as to understanding of human embodied cognition in the context of the plasticity of the human body. The avatar is controlled by joint-to-joint mapping based on local rotation angles. The maximum flexion of each finger joint corresponding to 30 degrees of the avatar arm joint, while the maximum extension corresponds to minus 30 degrees. This allows the arm joint to move in the both directions, making it possible to create complex shapes. We compared four mapping conditions. In the sequential index-based condition, the joints of the index finger were mapped to the base of the avatar, and the joint of the little finger corresponded to the tip of the avatar. The sequential little-based condition was the opposite. In the sequential across condition, the third joint was mapped to the base, and the first joint was mapped to the tip. In the non-sequential condition, the joints were assigned in the predetermined random order. Through experiment, we investigated how variations in the arrangement of the mapping affect the quality of the manipulation experience of the arm in relation to anatomy and body cognition. In our study, 24 participants operated four mapping conditions using a within-subject design. Each condition was evaluated based on a reaching task, post-implementation task, questionnaire, and user preference ranking. Finger movements were tracked using the Manus quantum metaglobe. In the reaching task designed to measure dynamic motor performance, participants were asked to touch a target located behind the obstacles using the avatar arm. This task was performed for 32 trials. In each trial, the size of the gaps between the obstacles and the placement of the target varied. To measure learning effects, the first 16 trials and second 16 trials contain the same configurations. We recorded the success rate and the reaching time. In the pose imitation task designed to measure the accuracy of precision movements, participants were asked to imitate the pose of a semi-transparent model arm. Anticipating two main challenges, identifying the finger joints to move and actually moving them, two types of stages were provided. In the model-based stages, the model arm was flexed at every three joint, and the pose was consistent across conditions. In the user-based stages, although the poses of the model arm varied across conditions, they were designed so that the target pose of the user found remained consistent across conditions. After completing the model task, participants responded to a questionnaire about the embodiment of a non-human avatar. In addition, after experiencing all four conditions, participants were asked to rank them. We then interviewed them about the strategies they used during the task and the reasons for their preferred rankings. In general, the result indicated that the sequential index-based condition had an advantage in the motor tasks, and sequential across condition was associated with a higher sense of agency, and participants preferred the sequential index-based condition. Learning effects were observed in the reaching task and the model-based stages of the post-imitation tasks. Also, no differences between conditions were found. For the reaching task, we found no significant differences in the number of success trials, but in reaching time, the sequential index-based condition was significantly faster than the sequential across condition. The result indicates that the poses required for reaching were archivable in all conditions and that these funds prioritize task success over reducing reaching time. Interviews and observations suggested that differences in reaching time were mainly influenced by the time it took to create the bent-up pose necessary to reach the targets and how comfortable it was to hold the pose. For example, in sequential index-based and sequential reader-based conditions, users could set a target by simply flexing the finger map to the tip of the arm, whereas in the sequential across condition, they had to flex just the distal joint, which was much challenging. In addition, participants in the non-sequential condition used the virtual arm as a fixed tool rather than flexible arm to simplify control. This approach could affect the sense of agency. In the post-imitation task, participants performed more accurately in sequential index-based condition than in the sequential reader-based condition, with performance declining in the non-sequential condition. In the model-based stages, the sequential index-based condition outperforms the sequential reader-based condition due to its intuitiveness. Participants naturally understand the correspondence between the index finger and the base of the arm using their proximity to the center of the body as cues, which facilitated smoother movements. The sequential across conditions performs better than the other conditions, but this advantage was attributed to the easier target arc force of the modeled arms rather than a better control. In the user-based stages, the non-sequential condition performs worse than the others. This poor performance was due to the challenge of identifying the joint to move and performing the movements with a kinematic constraint on the hand. From the questionnaire, there were no significant differences in ownership across conditions. In terms of agency, participants felt it in the order of sequential across, sequential index-based, sequential reader-based, non-sequential. In particular, in sequential across condition, the coordinated alignment and movement of the fingers, which approximately mirrors the shape of the arm, increased the agency. There was almost no evidence of a change in bodily perception. Contrary to expectations based on previous researches, we didn't observe a protest effect related to the octopus-like appearance, just the acquisition of subjective perception of flexibility of the body. This discrepancy could be attributed to the control complexity of the non-human structure, which may have reduced immersion and identification with the avatar. The sequential index-based condition was the most preferred. This ranking was influenced by ease of control, specifically intuitiveness and kinematic feasibility of operations. From these results and interviews, we extracted mapping design factors that influence the control experience. The design factors can be broadly grouped into three: visual and configurational similarity, kinematic suitability for the user, and correspondence with everyday actions. The visual and configurational similarity factor includes four subfactors: sequentiality, similarity in visual characteristics, similarity in arrangement, and similarity in cognitive arrangement. These factors serve as a cue to associate the mapped joint between the virtual arm and the user fingers, allowing participants to operate the arm intuitively. The kinematic suitability for the user factor includes two subfactors: independence of joint movements and accuracy of joint movements. These factors highlighting the importance of mapping independently and accurately moving joints to critical avatar joints. Finally, correspondence with everyday actions had a positive impact on manipulation when the finger movements resemble the user's everyday actions. This suggests that with effective mapping design, it is possible to translate everyday skills into motor skills for non-humanoid bodies. Considering these factors, we can design effective mapping for bodies with non-analogous structures. In addition to visual and auditory communication, virtual reality technology has enabled bodily communication at a distance, but beyond mere replication of reality, the technology gives us the ability to reconfigure our bodies. Our research, Embodied Tentacle, proposed 10 factors for such reconfiguration of our bodies. These factors can be used as references for manually creating mappings or as constraints for optimizing mappings. We believe that these layers will contribute to the creation of new interaction, as well as our understanding of how we perceive our own bodies and the gradual first-person extension of ourselves, exploring the limits of our plasticity.